Have you ever wondered what really happens in that final breath? The one that steals the light from your eyes and takes you beyond everything you've ever known. Is it darkness, oblivion, judgment, or rebirth? Is there a grand throne or an empty silence? Are the stories we've been told just comforting tales, or distorted echoes of something terrifyingly real? The truth is not for the masses. It's not for the distracted or the proud. It's for the seeker, the one who cannot accept that death is the end and feels deep within that there must be something more. This is your invitation to decode what has been hidden in plain sight. The mystery of what lies beyond has never been truly lost. It has only been buried beneath doctrine, fear, ritual, and time. The Ecclesiastes whispered the riddle long ago. The dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. The soul is not extinguished, it returns. But returns to what? In the traditions of Egypt, that return is a passage through judgment. Your heart weighed against a feather. In the visions of Revelation, that return is a confrontation with the books of your life opened before a throne of fire. In the Tibetan Bardo, that return is a bewildering journey through realms created by your own consciousness, terrifying or liberating depending only on how you lived. These aren't separate beliefs. They are fragments of one ancient truth. Death is not the end. It is the beginning of exposure, the beginning of revealing, the beginning of becoming naked before your own soul, and most are not ready because most live with their backs to the truth, building lives of performance while starving fear spirit. We've been taught to fear death as a thief, but the truth is it's a mirror. It doesn't steal. It reveals the man in the mirror is not the one the world sees. It is the one you've become in silence, in thought, in intention and spirit. Luke tells the story of the rich man and Lazarus, not as a parable of punishment, but of perspective. One man had everything in the flesh and nothing in the soul. The other had nothing in the world, but was carried by angels into the bosom of peace. Why? Because this kingdom, this place beyond, does not measure your wealth. It measures your weight, the weight of your compassion, the weight of your honesty, the weight of your alignment with truth. It does not reward the successful. It rewards the sincere. The Bhagavad Gita speaks with the same voice as the embodied soul continuously passes. So at death, the soul passes into another body, but the destination is not random. It is guided by the vibration of your life. You cannot fake your way into the afterlife. You cannot manipulate judgment. You cannot negotiate peace. You arrive as you are, and as you are received. So many live like they have infinite time, but time is not your ally, it is your test. And most fail not because they're evil, but because they're asleep. The great alchemists from Hermes Trismegistus to Paracelsus knew this, that death is not the opposite of life, but the gateway to a higher one. The body dies, the ego dies, but the essence, the you behind your name continues, and if that essence is polluted, unexamined, numb, it suffers not because God is cruel, but because truth cannot be avoided. You see, the kingdom is not a place you enter. It is a reality that reveals itself when you're prepared to see. It's why Jesus said, the kingdom of God is within you. And if it's not within you, now don't expect to find it later. The book of the dead was not written for the dead. It was written for the living, those who still have time to prepare. The Garuda Purana maps the same passage of soul lost in attachment, drags its karma across realms, while the awakened one walks through gates of light as a sovereign. But awakening is not passive. It requires work. It requires confrontation. It requires you to face what you've ignored, forgive what you've held, and live in alignment with what's real, not what's popular. The Tibetan masters knew this well. Chogyam Trungpa called it cutting through spiritual materialism, not performing holiness, but embodying truth, because in that final moment, no mask will stay on, no belief will hide you. No ritual will save you. Only the truth will remain. And that truth for most is unbearable because they never sought it in life. They chased comfort. They avoided pain. They followed the herd and denied their inner voice. But that voice, it never stops speaking. Even now you hear it. That quiet knowing that the world is not enough, that there is something sacred underneath the noise, that death is not a punishment, but a passage, and that the kingdom is real, but not everyone goes there, and here lies the terror. Because the gate is narrow, not because it's exclusive, but because it requires you to strip everything false. Not everyone is willing, not everyone is ready, but you can be. If you start now, if you start looking inward. If you stop living like this is all there is, because the kingdom after death is shaped by the choices you make before it, not your religion, not your knowledge, but your alignment with love, with truth, with the eternal. This is not mythology. This is memory etched into scriptures, echoed in dreams, confirmed by saints and sages. The soul survives, the soul journeys, the soul becomes. And everything you are now is preparing you for what you will become then. So don't waste another breath. Don't ignore this question any longer. Don't wait for the priest or the scientist or the influencer to answer what only your soul can feel. You were born with the truth inside you. You only need to listen. Strip away the distractions. Let the illusions fall. Stand still and ask, if I died tonight, what part of me would remain? That answer is your compass. That answer is the gate. And if you follow it with courage, with sincerity, with love, the kingdom will not be far, because it's already waiting for you. The moment after death is not darkness. It is clarity, so piercing, so unfiltered, that most souls recoil. You see yourself as you truly are, not as others saw you, not even as you thought you were, but as eternity sees you. Every motive exposed, every thought etched in light. This is not a punishment, it is illumination. And that is what terrifies the unprepared, not wrath, but truth, because light does not hurt those who walk in it. It only burns those who have lived in shadow. In the Tibetan Book of the Dead, this passage is called the Bardo and in-between realm, where the soul witnesses terrifying visions or peaceful lights, not because they are sent by some god, but because they are projections of the mind itself. Your mind becomes your judge, your painter, your prison, or your liberation. And in that state, the soul is urged, recognize this as your own mind. Do not be afraid, do not cling, but most cannot. They fight, they deny, they attach. And in that resistance, they descend into confusion, into rebirth, into another cycle not yet complete. In the Christian text, the language is different, but the essence the same. Jesus tells of weeping and gnashing of teeth, not as literal torture, but the agony of a soul that finally sees what it rejected, the sorrow of wasted potential. Revelation speaks of books opened not to condemn, but to reflect. The Lamb's book of life is not a ledger. It is memory. You are not judged by rules. You are revealed by resonance. Did your soul resonate with love, with truth, with God? That is the criteria, not what you called yourself, but what you became when no one was watching. And here's what most don't understand. This journey is already happening, right now in this life. This is the Bardo. This is the weighing of the heart. Every moment is a seed, and those seeds bloom after you die into the garden or the wilderness you must walk through. You do not wait until death to start shaping your afterlife. You are doing it now. With every breath, every intention, every silence, what you build inward becomes your path outward. In the Garuda Purana, the Hindu soul all must cross the river, Vaitarani, a symbolic flood of all one's misdeeds. And there is no boat, only virtue floats. The more your life has been aligned with Dharma, with truth, with love, the easier the crossing. The more distorted, the heavier the waiting. These metaphors aren't fiction, they are psychological reality. They are spiritual architecture. They are your soul's next environment. And if you're hearing this now, it means you are being called not by me, not by the algorithm, but by your own deeper self, the self that remembers, the self that still believes, the self that is ready to awaken. So pause, take this in, and ask yourself, am I ready to live a life that prepares me for what comes next? Because if this truth is stirring something inside you, if your heart is beating faster, not with fear, but with resonance, then listen closely. What you're hearing is not just a video, it's an ancient reminder, a key, a mirror. And if you feel its power, don't let it stop with you. Let it ripple, share this message. Let others remember, let others awaken. Not everyone is ready, but some are just one word away from transformation. Speak that word, be that bridge, and if this has moved you, if something in you feels the veil thinning, then subscribe to this journey. Join those who refuse to live asleep. There is a community of souls rising, and you are part of it. Share, subscribe, awaken together. Not for vanity, for eternity, because the soul that walks alone can only go so far. But the soul that walks with others in truth, in courage and surrender, becomes light. Now let us return. Carl Jung, though a psychologist, saw deeper than most theologians. He wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And he was right. We spend our lives curating an image, stacking titles, polishing masks, yet underneath the soul waits, unchanged, untouched, unloved. There is a place beyond time where nothing can be faked, a space where no story holds up, no excuses remain, and the only voice that speaks is your own, unfiltered, unpolished, and utterly true. The ancients called it judgment, but not the kind imposed by an angry deity in the sky. This judgment is internal, a weighing not of sins but of sincerity, of intention, of essence. Your soul stands before the mirror of divine order, and what you see you cannot unsee. The book of Revelation calls this the Great White Throne. The Egyptians depicted it as the Hall of Ma'at. In both, your life is not read from commandments but revealed through symbols, vibrations, and memory. The scales do not ask if you obeyed. They ask if you lived with truth. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the heart is weighed against a feather weightless, pure, incorruptible. If your heart is heavy with guilt, with deceit, with the chains of selfishness, it sinks. If it is light, meaning unburdened by pride, clean in motive, aligned with harmony, it rises. You are not rewarded or punished. You are placed where you belong, where your frequency matches. That is what most people never understand. Heaven is not a reward. Hell is not a sentence. They are reflections, states of being. They are what you've created within yourself all along. The Buddha said, "What you are is what you have been. What you will be is what you do now." The law of karma is not about revenge. It's not some cosmic payback. It's a pattern, a momentum, an echo of energy that carries forward. If you live with anger, you leave with anger. If you cultivate peace, you walk into peace. The same law flows through the Gita, through the sutras, through the gospel. Jesus said, "By their fruit you will recognize them, not by their title, not by their prayers, but by their fruit, their choices, their spirit, their legacy." Because when the body falls away, what remains is the fruit you have grown in the garden of your life. And yet, most people neglect this inner garden entirely. They decorate the exterior, plant weeds of distraction, and wonder why nothing blooms. They live for appearances and their souls grow hollow. So when death comes, and it always comes, they are not ready. They haven't cultivated light. They haven't planted love. They haven't walked in truth, and so they wander lost. Not because they were condemned, but because they never prepared. The Garuda Purana speaks of this wandering, a soul confused, pulled by unresolved desires, stuck between realms. The Buddhist texts call this the hungry ghost. The Bible refers to it as outer darkness. These are not different fates. They are different names for the same truth, the consequence of a life unlived in alignment. But the good news is this: it is not too late. Not while you breathe, not while your heart still beats. This message is not one of doom. It is a call to awaken, to look in the mirror now before the veil is lifted. Because the real judgment is not someday in the clouds. It is every moment you choose to look away from your truth or to walk toward it. Richard Bauckham once wrote that the apocalypse is not destruction, but unveiling. It is not the end of the world, but the end of illusion. That is what awaits you after death, not punishment, but clarity. Not wrath, but reflection. Not a courtroom, but a mirror. And in that mirror, you will ask the only question that truly matters. Did I live in such a way that my soul is light? You see, the soul is not weighed by rules. It is weighed by resonance with God, with love, with the eternal laws that govern all things. That is why the Corpus Hermeticum speaks not of fear, but of preparation. The initiate purifies not to impress the divine, but to match it. The alchemist does not beg for salvation. They transform layer by layer until the soul becomes gold. So too, you are being called to transformation. Not performance, not perfection, but honesty. The honesty to admit what is out of balance, to forgive what is still hurting, to return to the sacred flame within. Because every sacred tradition agrees that flame never dies. It flickers, it hides, it dims beneath ego and distraction, but it never dies. It is your true self, your divine fingerprint, and if you nurture it, it becomes your light in the next world. In Luke 16, the rich man begged for just a drop of water, but it was too late, not because God refused him, but because he had refused life, refused to see the suffering outside his gates, refused to awaken. That is the real tragedy. Not death, but a life unused. So do not waste yours. Do not believe the lie that you can postpone your soul's work until you are older, safer, or more perfect. Begin now. Walk lightly. Love deeply. Choose truth even when it costs you, because that is the only thing that will remain. You will not be asked how much you achieved, but how much you aligned. Not how many knew your name, but how well you knew your own soul. The feather is waiting, the mirror is being polished, the kingdom is not far. But the question remains, will you enter it light? There is no single path the soul takes after death. The kingdom is not a hallway with only one door. It is a map of infinite doors, each opening based on the state of the traveler. Some souls rise in clarity, some descend in confusion, some dissolve into silence, and some return reborn, carrying the weight of unfinished lessons. These are not fates assigned at random. They are not rewards or punishments handed down by divine decree. They are consequences of vibration of memory, of spiritual gravity. And your life is the blueprint that builds your path. The Tibetan Bardo describes 3 possible outcomes: liberation, rebirth, or wandering. The liberated soul recognizes the visions that appear after death as projections of its own mind. It does not run, it does not cling, it simply sees, and in that seeing it awakens. The soul is then freed, released from the cycle of becoming, reuniting with the source beyond form. This is not some reward for being perfect. It is the natural result of clarity. Just as a drop of water returns to the ocean without resistance, so the clear soul dissolves into the divine without fear. But most do not recognize they panic. They chase the familiar. They try to hold on to form, to ego, to memory, and in that grasping they fall back into the cycle of birth and death. This is what the Bhagavad Gita teaches when it says, as the embodied soul gives up old and takes on new garments, so it moves from one life to another. Rebirth is not always a blessing. For the unconscious, it is a return to the classroom. For the aware, it is a mission of service. The soul continues not as a punishment, but as an opportunity. And yet even opportunity, when repeated without awakening, becomes suffering. The Egyptians feared this loop of repetition. To them, to die and be forgotten, to have no name on any tomb, was a second death. To live and leave no resonance in Ma'at, no harmony with the divine order, was to vanish. The soul was judged not just by its acts, but by its echo, by whether it left the world more aligned than it found it. In Hermetic wisdom, the soul that remains unrefined is pulled downward by density. It cannot rise, not because it is barred, but because it is heavy. It has chosen what does not endure: greed, resentment, arrogance, and thus returns to the realms that match such choices. But the soul that walks in light, even through suffering, becomes light. Even if it returns to the earth, it does so with wisdom. It is born not into chains, but into purpose. These are the bodhisattvas of Buddhism, the rishis of India, the prophets of Israel. Souls who no longer need the earth, but return to serve it. They remember who they are. And they live with clarity that cuts through illusion like a sword through mist. Yet even the remembering soul faces trial, because the world is a web of forgetting. The veil is heavy, the noise is constant. And so whether you rise or return, your one task remains the same: to remember. To remember truth in the face of deception. To remember light in the midst of shadow. To remember yourself, not the name, not the story, but the witness behind all of it. Thich Nhat Hanh once said, if you touch the present deeply, you touch the past and the future. In death, this becomes literal. Time dissolves. You see not in sequence, but in totality. You feel every word you spoke, every wound you caused, every act of kindness you gave, playing not from the outside, but from within. You become the receiver of your own life, and it is this immersion that determines your movement forward. Some feel the pain they caused and descend not out of punishment, but because they have not yet healed what they created. Some feel the joy they spread and rise not out of reward, but because they are light enough to fly. This is why the soul's work matters. This is why your small choices echo beyond comprehension, because nothing is lost, no thought is wasted, no act disappears. It all waits, it all returns, and when the body dies, there is nothing left to hide behind. The Gita speaks of the 3 gunas, tamas, rajas, and sattva. These are not just forces of nature, they are patterns of the soul. Tamas is inertia, darkness, heaviness. Rajas is movement, desire, ambition. Sattva is clarity, balance, light. At the moment of death, whichever guna dominates the soul determines its direction. It is not superstition, it is spiritual chemistry. You become what you've most consistently chosen. And no priest, no ritual, no doctrine can undo that. So ask yourself, what have you been choosing? Each day, each thought, each act, is it pulling you downward, scattering you outward, or centering you in light? Because that is what will meet you on the other side. And here's the most humbling truth of all. Not all souls return. Some do not rise, some do not reincarnate, some simply dissolve like smoke into the sky. Not as a punishment, but as a natural result of forgetting. These are the souls who never woke up, who lived entirely for the flesh, who rejected every whisper of the sacred until nothing was left. No resonance, no name, no flame. They return to dust because there is no longer a center to hold them. And this, the mystics say, is the most terrifying fate. Not torment, but disappearance. Not fire, but silence. Yet this fate is not sealed for you. Not yet, because you are still breathing, still choosing, still able to remember. And this remembering begins not in temples or texts, but in your own heart. When you pause, when you listen, when you say, I will not live another day asleep, because the soul that awakens now need not fear death. Later, the soul that walks in truth today prepares its wings for flight. And whether you rise, return, or release, the kingdom will be shaped not by the gods, but by you. There comes a moment in the soul's journey when all questions fall silent, not because they've been answered, but because they've become irrelevant. The ego dissolves, the names fade, and all that remains is a direct encounter with truth. Not as an idea, but as a presence. This is the climax of every sacred text, the destination of every spiritual path. Not a place, but a confrontation. A divine encounter with what has always been pure, unchanging. Absolute. In the Bible, this is the throne. In the Bardo, it is the clear light. In the Gita, it is the eternal self beyond action. In Hermeticism, it is the nous, the divine mind from which all flows. And in this meeting, no words are spoken. The soul stands naked and the truth speaks through silence. This is not the moment of judgment, it is the moment of remembrance. You are not interrogated, you are invited to see, to recognize, to finally feel the full weight of what it meant to exist. The truth does not punish, it reveals. And in that revelation, the soul either rejoices or breaks. Because this is not about heaven or hell, it is about alignment. Either your soul has grown to resonate with truth or it hasn't. Either you see it as beauty or as unbearable light. The soul that has lived in truth through struggle, through love, through surrender, meets this moment. Like a returning traveler, there is awe, yes, there is humility, but there is no fear, because what it sees is what it has always sought. It recognizes the light because it has carried fragments of that light through every choice, every sacrifice, every moment of compassion. For this soul death was never a wall, it was a veil. And now that veil is lifted and all is clear, but for the soul that refused, that ran, that denied the sacred within, and without this light is unbearable. It exposes everything. It burns away the illusions, and it shows the cost of every unconscious act. This is not torture, it is true. And truth to the unprepared feels like fire. The Gita describes this as the fire of knowledge, the flame that burns ignorance to ash. In the Revelation, it is described as eyes like blazing fire, seeing through all pretense. The Tibetan texts speak of wrathful deities, manifestations of pure awareness that appear terrifying only to those who resist them. But to the awakened, they are protectors, not punishers, because the difference is not in the light, it is in the soul that sees it. This is the great reversal, the final paradox. The light does not change, you do. And how you've lived determines whether you meet that light as a friend or a stranger. The great mystics have always said that hell is not a place. It is the experience of being shown what love is after you have spent your life rejecting it. It is not imposed from without, it is revealed from within. The pain is not external, it is the ache of what could have been, the sorrow of who you were meant to become. That is why the soul weeps, that is why there is gnashing of teeth. Because when the truth is revealed, all masks fall, and you see how close you were, how many chances you were given, how many times grace knocked and you ignored it. Yet even here, mercy remains, not in the form of escape, but in the form of understanding. The soul begins to see, to feel, and in that seeing, some souls begin their transformation, late perhaps, but not hopeless, because the divine is not cruel, it is patient, but it cannot override your will. You must choose to remember even now, especially now. This is why the teachings of the ancients are not focused on fear, but on readiness. The purpose of sacred study of prayer, of meditation, of ritual, is not to impress the divine. It is to train the soul to recognize truth when it appears. The rituals are reminders. The prayers are alignments. The silence is preparation, and the reason they matter is because without them, the soul forgets. And when the light appears, it sees not beauty, but terror. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." In this final moment, that privilege is fully revealed. You see not the person others believed you to be. You see the pattern of your energy, the imprint of your intentions, the weight of your essence. No one is there to accuse you, but you will not need them because you will know. And here one final choice remains, not in action, but in surrender. Will you resist the truth or will you fall into it? Will you contract in shame or expand in humility? Will you beg to return or will you release what has always held you back? This is the final letting go. Not of the body, but of identity. Not of breath, but of attachment. You are invited to dissolve, to surrender the story. The form, the striving, and to remember the still point within you that has never changed. The I am the spark, the mirror of the eternal. For the soul that says yes, that surrender is not annihilation. It is fulfillment. It is not the end. It is the return. You become not nothing but everything. The drop merges with the ocean, not erased but expanded. This is the kingdom. Not a palace, not a skull, but a state of being in which separation dissolves and only presence remains. And for the few who reach it, not by accident, but by choice, by courage, by devotion, there is no more death, no more fear, no more returning, only peace, only love, only light. Now you know, not because I've told you, but because your soul has remembered, somewhere beneath the surface of your mind, beyond all fear and doubt, you've always known this truth, that life is not random, that death is not final, that your story does not end with the body and the kingdom. The true kingdom has always been whispering your name. You were not born to consume. You were not born to perform. You were not born to survive. You were born to awaken, to become the bridge between what is seen and what is sacred. You were sent here not to chase the world, but to transform it from the inside out. The soul does not seek comfort, it seeks clarity. It does not worship success, it longs for surrender. And when the body dies, none of the things you built in the world will follow you. Not your house, not your followers, not your achievements, only your light or your absence of it. And this is why your life matters. Not because of what you do, but because of who you are becoming while you do it. Every word you speak, every thought you nurture, every act of love or fear, it all writes the texture of your soul. It all shapes your path beyond the veil. You are not just building a reputation, you are building your eternity. And that is a responsibility far greater than anything this world teaches you. The kingdom is not waiting at the end of time. It is waiting at the center of your being. And every breath is an invitation to return to it. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to be a saint. You need only to be honest. Honest enough to admit what must change. Brave enough to walk through the fire of your own awakening, and humble enough to kneel before the truth that has never stopped calling you home. There are only two kinds of people in the end. Those who say to the truth, "Your will be done," and those to whom truth says, "Very well then, your will be done." The first rise with grace, the second collapse under the weight of their own illusions. The choice is not made in a single moment. It is made moment by moment, breath by breath, life upon life. And now this moment is yours. You don't need another sign. This is the sign. This message reached you not by accident. It found you because you were ready to hear it. And if it stirred something inside you, don't let it fade. Let it transform. Let it plant something deeper than inspiration. Let it plant action, integrity, alignment. Begin today to live as the soul you hope to be when you die. Begin today to live as if you are already walking in the kingdom, because you are. Every time you forgive when it's hard. Every time you speak truth when it's costly. Every time you love when you could have turned away, you are building a reality that death cannot erase. And when your final moment comes, and you will not face darkness. You will face yourself. You will face what you've always been becoming. And in that meeting, may you stand tall. May you feel peace. May you remember that you live with your eyes open, with your heart open, with your soul aligned. May you hear the voice beyond all voices whisper, "Well done, come home." And if this message has touched you, if it reminded you of something ancient within your own being, then do not let it stop with you. Share it, let it echo, let it awaken others. Because the world does not need more noise, it needs more light. And you are the vessel. Subscribe not just to this message, but to the journey of your own awakening. Walk with us, rise with us. Speak the truth when others whisper lies. Shine your soul into a world drowning in shadow. And remember what you do now. Echoes in eternity, your life is not small. It is the beginning of forever. But even as you hear these words, there will be resistance. The world will pull at you. The noise will distract you. The ego will whisper that all this is poetic, unrealistic, impractical. It will say, live now, worry later, but that voice is not your soul. That voice belongs to the part of you afraid to let go, afraid to be still, afraid to meet the part of you that cannot be bought, cannot be praised, cannot be destroyed. Yet that part is the real you, the you that existed before the world named you, the you that will remain when the world forgets you. If you close your eyes now and place your hand on your heart, you will feel it. Not in words, not in logic, but in knowing. A pulse, a quiet fire, a sacred yes. That yes is the kingdom calling. It is not far, it is not hidden. It is only veiled by your distractions. So strip them away, turn inward, listen again, because eternity is not measured in years. It is measured in attention, in intention, in presence. And the soul that begins to live from that place fully, fiercely, honestly becomes free. Even before death arrives, you will walk lighter, you will love deeper, you will fear less because you will have remembered what matters. So let this be your beginning, not the end of a video, but the start of a vow, a quiet promise to yourself to no longer live asleep, to no longer wait for heaven, but to become it, to bring the kingdom into every step, every breath, every choice.